Hey, Spuddies, Potato McWhiskey here, and welcome to the Civilization 7 4th Dev Diary analysis. This one is all about emergent narrative. Greetings, Civ fans, Sarah here. We're finally entering the last month of 2024, but the excitement for Sid Meier's Civilization 7 doesn't stop this year. With launch arriving in just over 2 months, we've got an action-packed December that includes today's dev diary on the emergent narrative system. What is emergent narrative, you ask? Read on to find out. And as always, hit us up on Civ's social channels if you have any questions or just want to say hi. So this is Kat Manning. This is the narrative director for Civilization 7. Hi everyone, I'm Kat Manning, the narrative director for Civilization 7, and I'm excited to talk about our brand new emergent narrative system. In this dev diary, I'll talk about what the emergent narrative system is, how it works, why we decided to create it for Civilization 7, and its potential down the road for years to come. So just kind of like, I want to preface this dev diary. Just speaking personally, I find I have the simplest way to describe this is that I personally do not find it very interesting to read when I am playing a video game. And, you know, that's why, like, the Paradox games, while I love Paradox games, I love the gameplay of Paradox games. One of the areas of these games that other people seem to love are the sort of narrative events that pop up and tell you little stories and you get like little bonuses and stuff like that. That is an aspect of the game that I do not like. However, I understand and accept that when I say that I do not like it, what I mean is here's how I engage with it. And this is important because you need to keep this in mind when I'm giving feedback about this particular dev diary, okay? Like, let's say an average person, okay? You get a little pop-up and it has a button, okay? It has a button, it's like, okay. And then there's a whole bunch of text, okay? Average person reads all this with their eyeball. They look at this and their enjoyment of the game goes like, huh, that was neat. My enjoyment went up slightly when that event happened. Okay, let's say enjoyment is going along here. The narrative event happens and they went like, oh, that was fun. And then it goes back to playing the game, right? Like there's like a little bump in enjoyment and they click the button. And then sometimes you'll have two buttons and it'll be plus good thing and minus bad thing here, or plus good thing, minus bad thing here. And some people find that to be really fun. Like people really like this, okay? When I see this, I feel forced to read it. So I'm angry, right? I'm really mad that I've been forced to read this thing. This is me, Potato McWhiskey, okay? I'm mad as hell because I have to read this thing. And I have to now I have to look at this and calculate. Now I have to think. Now my brain has to do work. So for me, this is just, I don't like this. I have had less fun. And actually, it makes the overall game less fun for me over time. And this is just me speaking personally, right? Some people love these things, okay? And it enhances, oh, I got a little story. Me, I don't like them, okay? And that's something to keep in mind because I'm going to be giving feedback on the narrative event system, the emergent narrative system in this particular video. If you're the kind of person that loves these systems, you're going to completely disregard everything I say about it. Okay, first, let's briefly talk about what narrative is in video games. Narrative often refers to the story, plot, or themes that the game aims to convey to players, which provides context for a player's actions, but how that's experienced varies drastically depending on the genre. Some games have linear narratives, while others have branching stories that change based on the player's decision. So an example of a game with... it's important that we also have to make distinctions between like the story narrative and the gameplay narrative, right? Like the story of Half-Life 1 is linear, but the gameplay narrative, the story the player tells through gameplay, is non-linear, right? Because it's essentially a sandbox shooter in the sense that you are given a task and then a bunch of tools to achieve that task how you wish. And whereas for Call of Duty, that is very much so both story linear and gameplay linear. Because there is only one way for you to solve your problems, and that is shooting it. There is not very much room for player expression within that, right? That is not good nor bad. That is just is. It is just an is, right? It is not an ought. It is not a judgment. It is not a prescription or what. It is just that is an analysis of the way that things are. And the narrative in Civilization tends to play out in your own mind, right? Oh, damn it, Alexander declared war on me. In 1222 BC, the Greek Empire went to war with the Macedonian Empire over the Straits of Gibraltar, right? You make up that narrative, you tell that narrative yourself. And what I really like about that self-told narrative, if you're a player that doesn't care about the narrative as much, it is invisible. It does not affect you. It does not happen to you, which is why I don't like these narrative events. That's me. It's a me thing. It's not a game bad thing. It's a me not like thing. For strategy games, especially Civilization, players often form their own story about their empire or playthrough. These stories emerge from choices they make and the results of those decisions. Civ has been exploring narrative events for a while, like with the Outback Tycoon in Civilization 6. Yep, there is the interesting... Sometimes I do like the narrative events. I will admit that, but just... Also, Beyond Earth had narrative events. Civilization 4 had narrative events. But what if we could create a system that recognizes the events of the game as open-ended as Civ is, and we weave those larger stories that could emerge from your choices? Here's the thing. From an analysis point of view, from me looking at this sounds really cool. It's just one of those areas where I have a personal bias, okay? When creative director Ed Beach and I first sat down to think about what we wanted from a system like this in Civilization 7, we were driven by the idea of history built in layers. Check out our PAX panel for more information on that. We've learned from past systems like Civ 6's gossip mechanics, where the player receives information about the actions and activities of the civilizations, and our new approach focuses on responding to the unfolding game as it happens. At first, we created the system for specific narrative events triggered by player behavior. These are meant to provide you with a snapshot of what might be happening to individual inhabitants of your empire and to offer you 2 to 3 choices to make. They are less about a wrong or right answer and more about what your civilization's priorities and values are. Just to me, these events, they are low interaction loot boxes. That is what an emergent narrative system is. It's like, oh, you got a pop-up. What do you need? Science or culture? Gold or production? And in a way, I liked Humankind's narrative event system because the decisions were shaping your empire's philosophy rather than just giving you a bunch of yields. Some of the events did give you a bunch of yields, but yeah, I don't find these exciting or super interesting. I like my gameplay to be out of these narrative event systems. Now, then again, I did actually really like Old World, where a significant amount of the gameplay happens inside of these narrative event systems. But in a way, you are really shaping characters in that game and relationships. Whereas, I don't know, I'm hopeful that we'll see good stuff from this narrative system. However, as the system developed, a bunch of other features and mechanics started to find use for it. Discoveries, our replacement for goody huts, crises, and systematically generated content meant to flesh out other parts of the game. The emergent narrative system tracks major moments in your game. So you can kind of probably think of this a little bit like the Golden Age, not dedications, the historic moments, but instead of it just getting a pop-up and some score, you get a pop-up with maybe a bit of story. So I would imagine that this system is basically built off of that. So it tracks major moments in your game like battles, technological advancement, big advancement, and responds when events tailored to your playthrough. It works via the modifier system, which at its core is a combination of requirements and effects, so conditions and outcomes. A narrative event will wait for its requirement to be fulfilled, which can happen at any point during the game. These requirements vary. Some can be triggered by your choice of civilization or choice of your leader, reflecting stories from their lives, such as Augustus's urbanization ambitions or Benjamin Franklin's fire brigade. Other events can be tied to your choice of civilization or specific gameplay moments. Again, this sounds really cool. This sounds really, really interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see, this might be really cool. Beyond looking at game states, we also wanted to be able to track your decisions within the narrative events themselves. By applying a narrative tag in certain cases, we're able to actually trigger narrative events that call back to things that happened in past ages. This is enormously powerful as it enables our writers to tell more granular and specific stories and really creates a sense of historical immersion at a level we've never had before. We wanted to be able to answer the question we asked ourselves: how could we tell a story about someone who was a warmonger in the Antiquity Age but has been peaceful ever since then? With the modifier system alone, we didn't have the information needed to track that, but with narrative tags, we've opened up the possibility for stories like this and countless more. I do think the great thing about a narrative event system is that it's a great way to add a bunch of content to a game without having to great way to add a lot of turn the Civilopedia from being a page where you just read things to bringing the Civil let me tell you about the granary, and you could tell a little bit more of a story about the actual empire that you're building. Maybe you get an event related to granaries when you build 3 of them or whatever. Narrative events usually, but not always, offer gameplay bonuses such as yields or combat buffs. The goal was to try to make the choices feel approximately equal, to not overshadow the rest of the game, and to be commensurate with the difficulty or rarity of the triggers. We don't want players to feel like they have to play with a guide open to get the results they desire. That's something really important for me personally. One of the things I hate about some of the Stellaris events is that they're often long event chains, and there's a sort of correct input thing to get the outcome you want. And I often find myself opening up the wiki when I'm playing Stellaris to try and figure out, okay, how do I get the unity bonus at the end of this tree? What's the outcome I get at the end? Rather than making sort of narrative decisions. Making rewards transparent and equal balances those who min-max and those who are more interested in the choice's narrative dilemma. There are occasional stories where the results are hidden, but we hope that clarity across the vast majority of our events lets players take a risk in these one-off situations. Listen, I understand, okay? The first time I play, I'm going to be like, oh, I understand. But the problem is you have to ask the player to buy in. What I would much rather happen here is for there to be an option at game start that says hide decision outcomes, okay? Because here's the thing. If you offer me a choice between two things and I don't care about the story, I only care about the outcome, I'm going to click one of them, reload the game, and then click the other one, and then follow the save file that gives me what I want. Because that is who I am. And because that is who I am, you have made the game worse. Okay? Or rather, I have made the game worse for myself, but that's your fault. Because you designed the game in a way that allowed me to ruin it for myself. Yes, put up guardrails on my bowling lane. You need to protect me from ruining the game for myself. Okay? Players will optimize the fun out of your game. Players will ruin the game for themselves. So give me the option to see what the outcomes are, because probably the first mod that I will install will show me all of these things. You'll only see a subset of these narrative events in a single campaign, which helps make every new playthrough feel unique. I understand that this is what they're saying. Eventually, when you play 1,000 hours, you're going to have seen almost all of them. It would be kind of cool if there was like a little flag on each event to say whether or not you as a player have seen it before. That would be kind of cool if you could have like a little counter on it, say you've seen this event 10 times. By having these occasional moments of mystery, we hope all players will partake in the experience of the unknown. I really appreciate your hope. I'm not going to do it. Not because I don't appreciate what you're doing, but because it is who I am. I am wired this way. Okay? It's built in. It's what I do. And I can't stop it's not that I can't stop myself. It's that I don't want to. I do not see the way that I am as a problem. I just am. I am perfectly, that is the way that I interact with the game systems. And I derive a lot of enjoyment from the game. So it is, anyway. As mentioned before, there are a bunch of different types of narrative events. Some of them are linked to your leader choice, some to your civ choice, and others aren't specific to either. When writing our narrative events, there are several broad categories we got excited about. Historical events. These highlight moments large and small from history that align with your gameplay. You might see ancient medicinal discoveries, daring prisoner escapes, chariot riots, artistic feuds, and enormous Mongolian armies. What if scenarios? These explore what if questions. So you've got historical events, enormous, it's kind of hard to really draw analysis about this because I don't know what it means. Does this just spawn a huge Mongolian army? Is there a story? I don't know. What if scenarios? What if these explore what if questions unique to the sandbox nature of a civ game? For example, what could have happened if Ashoka had not been overcome with the remorse at the destruction he caused and instead doubled down on a path of violence? Or if Xerxes had not been defeated and had successfully completed his invasion of Greece? These are kind of interesting what if. I do find that what if scenarios are some of the least interesting aspects of history if you're looking at it from a historical, a historian lens. But if you're looking at it from a fun lens, it's basically a Portal fantasy or whatever in your head. It's oh, dude, what if Alexander had a machine gun? And that becomes kind of interesting, right? I know that's a bad example, but look, the point is about the idea, not about the specific example. Unique gameplay moments. These reflect choices you've directly made in the game, showing the on-the-ground impact of your actions during each age. Achieving a golden age with certain traditions active, choosing your religious beliefs, or suffering damage from wars or weather events can all bring up narrative events. Okay, interesting. So there's certain flags. The thing I don't like about this is that it encourages me, I don't know how to explain this very well, but basically it encourages me to basically imagine there's it basically adds if you imagine this is the gameplay layer, okay? There's a whole bunch of stuff happening on this layer of gameplay, okay? Let me just quickly fix this. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening on this gameplay layer, okay? And everything on this layer is interacting with each other in a very transparent fashion. But then you add this narrative event layer, And like over here, maybe you have like the government policy cards, but if I have this very specific government policy card, there's like an invisible trigger that triggers this invisible layer over here that could actually give me an invisible, that gives me a benefit over here, which is maybe like my military. And so even though the natural thing would be to plug in like card A, which would give me this benefit, if I do card B and wait long enough for the event to trigger, which is like a percentage chance, I actually get an even better outcome. And this sort of invisible sort of multiple layers of the gameplay thing is something I abhor personally. So I'm worried when it comes to the system for moments like that, because it'll just make the game less fun for me. Discoveries are a subset of narrative events that can only occur on the map and replace goody huts from previous games. I think this is actually just strictly an upgrade to the previous tribal hut mechanic. Instead of a small phrase and a standard reward, you'll have a short snippet of text giving you a bit of flavor as to why you're getting these rewards. Unlike goody huts, discoveries now have a choice between their bonuses, allowing you to have some influence over your early game boosts. I like that. In some respect, I like the randomness of the bonuses that you get from goody huts, because it sort of sets the game up with an extra little bit of a sprinkling of random seed, and I love randomness. Giving the player control over it, like maybe food is just always better, maybe culture is just always better. It's still kind of random, but randomness where I make a choice. I like randomness where I roll dices. I don't know how to explain my feeling, but yeah. Technically, this is an upgrade to the discovery systems, but I do just kind of prefer randomly assigned bonuses. It is better. It is better objectively in some capacity, but I do just prefer the old way. Systemic events. Systemic events are recurring gameplay moments like crises or gifts from independent powers, and they use the emergent narrative system to add context and personality to game mechanics. Whereas crafted narrative events tell stories, systemic narrative events tend towards the informative. These are more straightforward because their purpose is to add a narrative flair to explain why and how, rather than telling a complete story. Yeah, so this is the Rising Storm. Pretty cool. What's next? There are over 1,000 narrative events for you to experience in Civilization 7 at launch, further enhancing the system to ensure every playthrough feels unique. Through the emergent narrative system, we've had the opportunity to introduce levels of historical and what-if storytelling that we've never had before. We can't wait to hear what you think when Civilization 7 launches on February 11th, 2025. So I think the ultimate sort of takeaway here of the emergent narrative system is I think there's going to be certain people who will love this. It'll add so much to the gameplay. Paradox players will likely enjoy this. People who enjoy those kind of event-driven systems. I'm just, unfortunately, for the Civilization developers, unfortunately for Kat Manning and the people who work at Civ 7, I'm just one of those people who does not enjoy it. And, you know, you guys should keep that in mind when I'm whining about it in a couple of months from now, because you might see that a lot of players actually really like it. But I personally, yeah, if there's one thing I am still willing to give it a go, but if there's one thing I wish, I knew that the genre was going to go this way, that the whole 4X genre was going to push in the direction of more events, because they are really, really good and designers love them. But man, do I just personally not like them very much. And it's a personal thing. I can't even say like, oh, they're bad for the game because blah, 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 blah. It's like, this is the one place where like just me on a preference level this is like a feature that I would like heavily rework or remove before Civilization 7 even launches, because I know that I don't like them very much. I just don't like narrative event systems. I'm sorry. You know, I've spent like 10, 15 years playing with them and I don't like them very much. Anyway, yeah, I think some of the people who are watching here, let me know what you think though. Like, I think some of you guys are going to really like this. Some of you guys are going to feel neutral about it. For me personally, I just personally don't like them, but they are really cool for the vast majority of people. Most normal people should like these. These are cool, right? You get a little story. An itinerant mystic has made spiced cider from fruit trees planted along his journey. Crowds are already gathering to enjoy the beverage and listen to his sermons. You can take up the product or you can take up the lesson. Me, right? Here's how I interact with this. My brain, this text merges together into a blob of nothing, and I see the food symbol and the culture symbol, and I click the one I want. That's my whole interaction with the system. Same here. It's like a thief at the baths. A Roman Argentarius emerges from the baths, only to find that his clothes have been stolen. There's only one response to this offense: a curse tablet. He pulls out his stylus and a thin slab of lead. Either thieves deserve ill health, or thieves deserve sleep deprivation. Again, me, I see this, oh, a pop-up. Click, I wanted science. That's the whole level of interaction. And like in my brain, I'm like, okay, how many people worked on this? How many man hours went into it? How many development hours? I'm like, you could have, like, this is just me. I'm like, all this money, time, energy could have been put into something else. And I would just prefer to have this idea play out in my own head than to be written to the page. But these are, again, that is just a me thing. I am like 3 standard deviations away from the mean when it comes to people who enjoy these systems. The average person should like this. Like, these are just good for the game, as much as it pains me. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this dev diary. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!